Okay, it says we're live, but I want to wait for the official notification from YouTube. And we are live. Well, listen, I want to welcome everyone to this week's amazing episode of the Xbox Factor podcast, one of your YouTube sources for the best and most honest opinions when it comes to the brand that we love the best. And of course, that is the Xbox brand. I have to, of course, introduce my panel. First of all, I want to thank Zemi Games for being here today, but also being a full-time member of this amazing weekly show. Zemi, welcome to the show, dude.
Thanks so much, Boom. Super happy to be here. A lot of Xbox news. You said it best whenever we first jumped in here before we came on live. You said, "Man, you're just surprised at all the Xbox news," and I'm 100% in agreement with you. Can't wait to jump in and talk about it. So thank you so much, Boom.
Well, listen, it's going to be a great show. If you are someone that enjoys the Xbox brand, listen, it doesn't matter. Everyone's welcome here. I want to throw that right out there. It doesn't matter whether you like Xbox, if you fly PlayStation, if you fly PC, Master Race, or, of course, you're a Nintendo fan. Everyone is welcome here. But if you are an Xbox fan, get ready, because we have one of the biggest Xbox fans that I personally know as a special guest. And, of course, we're talking about Jamie Moran, the elusive gamer, all the way from across the pond. Welcome to the show, dude.
All right, everybody. I'm happy to be here. And let's get into the news.
Well, listen, again, lots to talk about. And I know there's going to be people, well, where is the London gamer? I mean, the Welsh gamer. Where's the Welsh gamer? Well, the Welsh gamer, unfortunately, is having some work done to his house. So it would be too noisy to actually be on a podcast if they're breaking walls and putting down carpet and putting on wallpaper and whatever and painting. So he'll be back in his chair next week. But let's get right into, of course, today's first topic. Now, Obsidian Entertainment, as we know, and has been confirmed by Microsoft and, of course, by Obsidian themselves, they're currently hard at work at not one, not two, but the word several big AAA RPGs, making this one of the biggest acquisitions right next to Ninja Theory. And to sweeten the deal, of course, we had last month, of course, the Outer Worlds, and it has, we're getting some information that it might receive some post-launch content, which is amazing. Now, while it's safe to say that the Outer Worlds is a success for Obsidian, makers of the world's best RPGs. And when you talk about other RPGs, you think about what they did in the past, right? You think about, of course, the OG Xbox Star Wars game, right? Knights of the Republic 2, masterpiece. And then you harken back to what else comes to mind? Well, Fallout New Vegas, which is one of my personal favorite RPGs of all time. Well, speaking to Eurogamer, programmer and Grounded lead director Adam Breckneck said that just like the Outer Worlds, we have big RPGs that are being worked on right now. We have a lot of stuff being worked on that we haven't talked about. When quizzed about how many games were in development, studio head Fergus Unart, who notes that he's not the CEO anymore, responded, "More than one, less than 40. We're working on a number of new RPGs." Now, I think that's funny, of course, but listen, when you tell me as a fan that just put 40 plus hours into Obsidian's The Outer Worlds, which is by far my favorite Obsidian game, it has moved into first place over the incredible Fallout New Vegas. And what I loved about this game was the personality that it held. Like obviously, Jamie, you're a big fan of Mass Effect. And one of the things that I got right away when you started finding crew members is you got that sense that you cared about the crew member. I felt it almost necessary to make sure I did all of their missions first before, finishing any of my own personal missions for the story, because I cared about the characters. Are you expecting that the same quality of RPG that we just played, that is in Game Pass day and date, if you're a Game Pass subscriber, that you're going to get possibly even better with the numerous AAA RPGs that they're making?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, as you know, I'm like one of the biggest Mass Effect fans, and this Obsidian game gave me hope for them being able to make the next Mass Effect. Now, I'm not saying Outer Worlds is that. Like, Outer Worlds is very much a Fallout type of game with a hint of Bioshock, but a lot of Mass Effects in there. In this whole generation, people have been clamoring for, like, you know, a proper Mass Effect game or a spiritual successor. And, like, look, I don't care what people say. People say that Game Pass devalues games. Not true. But like, Obsidian have the talent, they have the know-how, and everything about the Outer Worlds shows me that they could make the next Mass Effect style game.
Yes.
Because this entire generation, people screamed Mass Effect, and then we get Mass Effect Andromeda, and it's not what people wanted. And this was a spark to me, because I've always liked Obsidian. Like, I've always liked their games, but I've never thought, you know what, they could make a Mass Effect style game. But playing this makes me think they can. Now, unfortunately, I haven't been able to finish it yet because of just time restrictions, but like, it's a good game. And I personally think that Obsidian's on the up, because like, the only thing that's held them back in the past is a budget. And now they don't really have to worry about the money in their pockets.
No, that's well, I mean, again, obviously development is expensive. And when you become a part of a company like Microsoft, it gives them because you have to understand something. See, a lot of people don't know this about the Outer Worlds. Did you know, if you didn't know, this started out as a crowdfunded project. Like, they didn't even have the money to do this, right? And they get purchased by Microsoft, and they had a publishing deal that was outside of Microsoft at the time. But moving forward, the Outer Worlds, which is not only a very well received critically success game, financially it's doing very well, which means that the sequel, if you happen to be someone that, let's say, played it on the PlayStation 4 and you only own one console right now, and you really enjoyed the game, there's a very good chance that you're going to be like, well, if the sequel is going to be exclusive to PC, I can play it there, of course, if you are part of the master race, or I'm going to have to actually go out and buy an Xbox because I really love the Outer Worlds. And to be honest with you, this move is ingenious. I'm not sure if Microsoft actually purposely did this, but it's going to work out well. You have a successful game, a new IP exclusive to the brand, and people who don't own an Xbox may actually go out and buy one because of the sequel. Zemi, let me ask your opinion on this. Now, when you talk about a studio, studios acquisitions, this to me is probably one of the biggest that they can put in their crown of acquisitions. And I'm not taking away from anyone else. I think every acquisition brings something unique and important to the Microsoft first-party brand. But when you talk about Obsidian and what they just did and what they've done in the past, this was one of the biggest moves to come out of 2018. What are your thoughts on the multiple AAA RPGs that they're working on?
Well, I mean, I've said this 1,000 times, and I'll go ahead and keep saying it. I absolutely love role-playing games. It's some of my favorite games. Like, the amount of immersion that you get out of a good role-playing game is, I mean, it's just one of my favorite aspects of the game. Whether it's Fallout, Elder Scrolls, the Outer Worlds, Mass Effect, Fable, it doesn't matter. I love them all, and just for that reason. And because I think Xbox needs as much variety as possible, and role-playing games is one of the best genres to go with, I think it's an absolutely huge deal that they picked up Obsidian, back in 2018 when they did. And actually, during like the EXO 2018, whenever they announced Obsidian, that was a huge shock to me. And you said it before, they have had a lot of financial troubles. I think I've said it on this show before that I put them right up top where Bethesda used to be as far as, a creative, well-rounded studio. The only issue that Obsidian has kind of had is they just don't, they just are in bad financial needs, and so the ability that Xbox came in, picked them up, is a huge thing, and it's going to definitely help them fund new projects in the future. And I would absolutely love it if Obsidian's next RPG was like a Mass Effect clone, kind of like look-alike. Then again, I would be happy for a sequel to Alpha Protocol. That's an RPG that you mentioned, Knights of the Old Republic, and you mentioned Fallout New Vegas, but you didn't mention that one. Oh my God, Alpha Protocol was one of my favorite. Probably, it's possible that it is my favorite Obsidian game.
Wow.
It didn't get that good of reviews back in the day. I don't know why. But I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed that game. I don't think that's probably going to be a sequel. I don't think that the spy genre is as big. I think it's a little bit more niche now than it was back in the day. But I think it's a huge thing. It's definitely one of the biggest victories for Xbox this generation, if you ask me, that they acquired Obsidian.
No, I mean that's very interesting, and I actually totally forgot about Alpha Protocol. And you know something, the spy genre that you're talking about has always been controlled by Splinter Cell, and we don't have that. And before that, you can harken back to some of the Ghost Recons, like the Rainbow Six, where there was some stealth required, and that's gone. Right, and we don't know when we're getting a new Splinter Cell, so the market is primed to have a new or a reboot of the series of bringing back Alpha Protocol and making it this epic RPG / stealth action type of game. And you know something, I hope that they do that, because like I said, it's a genre that is at this point, at least for this generation, has basically been only given to Assassin's Creed. And Assassin's Creed, that series itself has evolved to more of an action adventure. Because sure, you can stealth kill the hell out of everyone, which is what I do. But most people just run through it and just slice and dice everyone, get what they have to do, finish the mission, and finish the game. So that genre is untapped at this point, and I think that would be a great one to bring back. But I want to just read some information about the story. Now, interestingly enough, the team behind the Outer Worlds is still busy with the game, and that's interesting. That's interesting because we had no idea that there was going to be potentially support for this game, because it is a single player game. And we, no one ever, and I mean, I never thought to ask what was going to happen afterwards, because it's a big game and you're probably going to play 40, 50, 60 hours into it. But according to UCart, he didn't write out confirm it, according to the article. But there seems to be a plan for continued support, perhaps some post-launch content. And what's also been very interesting is about the independent developer was who is going to pay for the support. And obviously now that they're with Microsoft and they're building upon this new IP that Microsoft has said publicly that they're going to continue to support. So I mean, there's pretty much no doubt in my mind that we're going to get an Outer Worlds 2. But it would be pretty interesting if we got Outer Worlds DLC, and maybe they just didn't charge you for it. Maybe they just added it to the game. And again, one thing about Microsoft is that they are very consumer friendly, and to get people to jump on. I mean, again, you have to entice the folks who are. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that don't believe the hype with Game Pass. People just, some people are old school and they want to keep buying their discs. And even those people, even those folks that continue to still, support the physical hardware, it would be pretty cool if you were one of those folks and you came home and you love the Outer Worlds from top to bottom, and you get to find out that there's free DLC coming. I mean, you couldn't get any better. But I just want to do a quote from one of the developers there. He says that in the Microsoft world, we get to run a studio based on what makes sense for the franchise. And I'm not having to make these day-to-day decisions so much. People are obviously loving the Outer Worlds, and we made it because we love it too. So now we get to keep doing this and help continue supporting it. So that sounds like there's going to be free DLC coming. And I mean, I'm saying free because it doesn't sound like they're going to be charging for it. I mean, I could be 100% wrong, But Jamie, I want to come back to you. You know, the one thing that when you talk about Western RPGs, it's something that the Xbox Games Studio has been missing basically this entire generation. And with the addition of In Exile and, of course, Obsidian, it seems that the drought is over. Now, The Outer Worlds, in my opinion, is the best RPG that I've played from Obsidian. But also, when you like I said, when you look at what they've done in the past, what they've done recently, do you think that the drought for the Western RPG for the Xbox brand is pretty much over?
Oh yeah. I mean, my biggest complaint this generation wasn't about Connect, it wasn't about anything else. It was literally about RPGs. Last generation we got a handful. This generation we literally got zero. And Microsoft fixed that. We now have multiple studios making RPGs. We have Obsidian, one of the most renowned RPG developers, now making games for Xbox. And, you know, I think they're on the up and up because Obsidian clearly want to stay and make the games they want. And, you know, the way Phil is now, he wants developers to make the games they want. And I think people saw Grounded and thought, oh my God, we're not getting RPGs anymore. But I think it's the complete opposite. When you say there's like 200 people working at your studio and like 13 of them making this Grounded game, the rest are making RPGs because that's what they do, you know. And I think we're over the gap now where we had no RPGs, you know, because like, what's the next RPG going to be? It's probably going to be, you know, something from Playground Games or something. Yep. But like, we've got shooters, we've got racing games, we've got all that. But RPGs is what we need, and the Outer Worlds is a fantastic start.
Yeah, it certainly is. And if you had any doubt, play the Outer Worlds. I'm telling you right now, you're going to be hooked. And this isn't a game that you have to play 15 hours in order to enjoy. And I'm not taking a shot at anybody in particular. I'm just saying that for me, as a gamer who support multiple consoles, who's always supported multiple consoles, when you talk about the Outer Worlds, I was sucked in immediately. 5 minutes after the game started, I was like, what? This is going to be one hell of a ride. And guess what, folks? It was one of the best RPGs, if not the best work Obsidian has ever done. But before we move on to the next topic, I want to get Zemi's final point on this. You know, Zemi, you obviously love RPGs. And like we were just discussing, Jamie and I, that there's been a drought, and it's been a very noticeable drought. And so Jamie actually said some important points. You know, we have shooters, right? We have a third person shooter in Gears 5. We're getting Halo Infinite first person shooter. We know we're going to get a new multiple Forzas in Horizon 5 and of course Motorsport 8. And the one thing, you know, obviously we're going to have all these smaller games, you know, these cartoon looking games, these family based games, but RPGs is something that everyone has been banging the drums for. And when you hear that Obsidian is working on multiple RPGs, and we know that you just said yourself you'd love to see them make some sort of a big Mass Effect type game, are you excited for the future regarding Western RPGs on the Xbox platform?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, Obsidian's one of those studios that, you know, has kind of went under a lot of people's mindsets. But ever since Xbox acquired them, and then I started playing, you know, the Outer Worlds, that has completely uplifted me out of my pit of depression, where RPGs, you know, haven't been really that forefront this generation. I'm super excited for what Obsidian does in the future with whatever project they're working on. I'm not really that excited about Grounded necessarily, but you know, they're still working on other RPGs, and so yeah, I'm absolutely pumped for what they're planning on coming out next generation with RPG wise. And then also to kind of touch on the post-launch content, that quote that you said kind of reminded me about how Chipotle treats guacamole, right? You know, like they always say, hey, do you want guacamole? And then they slap it on your burrito, and then they charge you like, you know, for it, right? Without telling you, pretty much, you know what I mean? But from my current understanding, pretty much DLC that comes to Xbox Game Pass games, first party Xbox exclusives, is not free. Forza Horizon, whenever I think they have released 2 DLC packs now, probably more, I don't really know, but you actually have to go onto the marketplace and purchase those. Of course, you get the base game for free, but then you have to purchase the DLC. That may be different with the Outer Worlds. But just from my understanding of how Xbox Game Pass works, DLC is usually not free.
Okay, I mean, listen, I'm going to be honest with you again.
Which I don't care. I'll pay for it.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you,
it.
because you are technically, and again, I'm not saying technically, you pay for the monthly service. Everyone's like, oh, you got the game for free. Well, not really, because you're subscribed. Like for me, I'm paid up until I think it's October of 2022. Like I went crazy. Like I when they have these deals, I jump all over them, because you get get 6 months half price. You have to do it. If you love the service, you have to do it. So I went crazy, and I'm paid up in 2022. So technically, even though I'm not paying per month, I've already paid. But listen, I don't know what I can only speculate. And I can only assume. And of course, I don't want to make an ass out of you and me. So, yes, it is possible that it will be free. But it's also possible that they'll charge $10, $15. And and knowing Microsoft and knowing Obsidian, I'm sure that if the DLC does come to fruition, it's going to be massive. And if it's half the size, let's say, for instance, they say it's half the size of the Outer Worlds. Well, the Outer Worlds is pretty damn big. And it's $15. Well, guess what? I'll take 2. Even though I only need 1. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to support my developer. So all I can say is that if you had any doubts as to what Microsoft is going to be doing in the future when it comes to Western RPGs, look out, because I think that there's going to be a lot to look forward to. But I want to move on to the next topic, and for me, it's an interesting one, and it's one that has 2 levels. Okay, now for the second topic of the show, we have some big news in the way of Playground Games. And both stories will absolutely excite everyone, not only on this panel, but everybody in this chat. Now, the official Twitter account from Playground Games just posted this yesterday, or it might even been the day before. And it says this: we're extremely pleased to introduce 2 new starters today to the We Are Playground Games RPG team. We have Brian Morell, who as lead VFX artist, joining us from Ready at Dawn, and Martin Bunker as principal animation engineer from Rockstar North. And look, let me just say this: every week that passed,
Boom, you there, buddy?
Hello, Boom.
Jamie, can you? I'm guessing you can't hear Boom.
Yeah, I can't hear him.
Oh, okay. Here, let me post some private chat. Okay, guys. Boom. I mean, he cut out for us. I'm guessing he cut out for you guys as well. I think he's hopping out and he's going to hop back in. So just bear with us. But anyway, Jamie, how are you doing today? Wonderful day over there in England.
Yeah, I'm suffering a cold yet again.
That's not good.
It's always cold and dingy here up in the northeast.
Do you guys have Thanksgiving over there? Because I mean, tomorrow's Thanksgiving over here in the States. I was just curious.
Nah,
or something like it. No.
Nah, I mean, in between Halloween and Christmas, there's not really anything.
Gotcha.
Doesn't stop people going out from celebrating, though.
Well, there's always something to celebrate, right?
Yeah. I see that Star Wars is actually selling really well over here.
Yeah, I saw a tweet about that. I'm absolutely loving the game. I have you played it yet?
Oh yeah, I'm like I'm like 12 hours in, but I've been grinding a lot. So I'm only like a few planets in, but I'm loving it. Like that game it's kind of the Star Wars game I've wanted the whole generation.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's easily the best Star Wars game that EA's put out yet, which really isn't, saying very much because they've only put out 3 games now, but I mean, easily it's my favorite.
Oh yeah, it's good. I mean, like Star Wars Battlefront was bare bones. Then the sequel came out, which had a campaign, which is it was okay.
It's
but
okay. Yeah.
But like, I have this thing against Frostbite. Like, I love Battlefield and how it looks and how it plays, but my God, that engine just absolutely ruins games. And like, as soon as Respawn announced that this is going to be Unreal Engine 4, like, I actually like fell to the ground for a moment, well, figuratively, and I'm like, thank God, because
Put
like,
your hands up in the air, like,
yeah,
thank you so much.
because like.
Finally.
Like the third person jank of a Frostbite game, it's a sting. Like Mass Effect Andromeda, janky. The third person gameplay of Battlefront 2, janky. But this it's so smooth. And yeah, it does have some bugs, but like it's not like a Frostbite game.
Yeah, I mean, any game that's going to release is going to have bugs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just like the severity of the bugs. And I don't think anyone's really encountered any game-breaking bugs, which is really the main thing that, counts. Like Mass Effect Andromeda, like I think a big reason why, bugs were so, were such a big issue in that game is that game legitimately had game-breaking bugs that would make it impossible for you to progress in the story if you encountered them. I mean, obviously they had, animation bugs as well, but, fortunately the Star Wars doesn't have that.
Oh yeah. I'm hoping that the sales of this like points towards EA is going, you know what? We don't have to force all of our developers to use Frostbite.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very, very important. I mean, with like first person shooters and stuff like Battlefield, even going as far as to say like Star Wars Battlefront, like I can understand them wanting to use Frostbite, but with any like third person games, I just don't think yeah. All right, boom. But yeah, I mean, with like, role playing games, anything like that, I just don't really understand why they, would ever want to use Frostbite going forward.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't even tools for third person like movement in that game. So like I don't know if you remember, but there was this kind of a movement bug in Mass Effect Andromeda where if you move the character from side to side quick, the character would walk like a crab.
Yes. Yeah.
And it just looked horrendous. And like, as a huge Mass Effect fan out the gate who hype trained it for months, I'm like, Mass Effect Andromeda is going to be amazing. And then I found out like maybe a month and a half before release that something was wrong with the game, and then I was just like, oh God, I have to cover for this.
Even with all of its issues, I still absolutely love that game. Like I put a week straight into that game, did every single thing possible, and I still want to go back and play it for a second playthrough. I absolutely love that game, even with all of its issues.
Oh yeah, it was. I'd still say it's a game people should play, but like when you go from the trilogy to that, there's a big jump in like quality. I mean, I've still got to go back to kill those giant robot worm things. I can't remember what they were called. But
on the desert planet.
Yeah. But like other than that, like, and the thing is, the multiplayer was actually really fun.
The multiplayer was good. I will say that. And then somebody asked me if I watch football on Thanksgiving, and no, I don't. I just eat pounds of turkey after pounds of turkey after pounds of turkey. I don't watch any football on Thanksgiving. But yeah, well, with Mass Effect Andromeda, I think a big issue with Mass Effect Andromeda is I think a lot of people were judging that game off of pretty much like the trilogy. You know what I mean? I mean, like if you judged Mass Effect Andromeda, the first game of the new, of like the new trilogy, to Mass Effect, like the very first Mass Effect, I think that's a fairer representation rather than judging it on the entire trilogy, like the first 3 games of the series. And I think a lot of people were judging it off the first 3 games and not just the very first game.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the biggest comparisons. Like people were comparing like three games of these lovable characters to one game, which didn't really get much of a chance. And held that game had cancelled DLC. It's a shame, really.
Yeah. I wish they would have continued supporting it, but I mean they didn't see it. I don't think that they really saw it being profitable, so they just kind of dropped it. But I mean, part of me wishes that they would have done that. I mean, I don't know. If nothing else, because like they set up like certain plots. Like I don't, somebody might be in the chat going to play the game. I don't want to spoil anything, but they set up certain plots, right? And those plots they were going to do in DLC. But because they canceled the DLC, they actually did those plots in like released books. Like they gave those ideas, I think, to like authors, and they incorporated that into like written media, like books. And I wish that they wouldn't have done that. I wish that they would have just held on to those ideas and kind of continued the game on, and like Andromeda 2 or something. But maybe they weren't planning on doing an Andromeda 2 at the time as well.
Yeah, I mean. At least now, like I think, like the main studio will actually be working on Mass Effect in the future, which is good news because like Andromeda was worked on by like a newbie team.
Yeah, I don't know why they decided to do that.
I'm back, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Hey,
Jesus,
welcome
Christmas,
back.
man. Oh my God, I was panicking. All right, so continue your point.
Oh man, we went straight off the rail. Boom. We started talking about Thanksgiving, the weather. Then we talked about Mass Effect and Star Wars Battlefront. So if you want to continue the next topic that you were transitioning us to.
Yes, you know what? Yeah. Let me do that. First of all, I have to apologize. I don't exactly know what happened. I have 5G internet, so I somehow got disconnected. And thank goodness that I didn't get disconnected where you guys, the chat that showed up here, and you guys, of course, were still here. So thank you for bailing me out. Let's continue with the topic at hand. The topic at hand, very simply, is getting back to the amount of hiring that Playground Games has been doing. It has me very excited as a fan because the one thing that if you look on the internet and Zemi, you had said something earlier that was pretty interesting, that the people on the internet, the people going to social media to talk about games, whether it be positive or negative, are what we consider the die-hard community, right? They're the 15, maybe 20%, but 20 is kind of pushing it. I want to say 15% of any console. That means PlayStation, that means Xbox, that means Nintendo, and I can't really say for PC. Most PC gamers are casual. I can confirm that. But when you hear that this talent is coming from some of the biggest developers in gaming, what exactly does that tell you what they're working on? And should we expect this big AAA open world RPG, possibly Fable 4, that we've been looking for?
Well, I think it tells me 2 things. It tells me, first off, whatever they're working on is big. And secondly, whatever they're working on, they don't want to screw up. You know what I mean? It's big and they don't want to screw it up. And, I think Fable 4, all the rumors are out there. I mean, we were talking about this before the show. They are obviously, Playground Games is obviously working on Fable 4. It's the worst, you said it, worst kept secret in gaming currently. It's the elephant in the room. Everybody knows it, but they haven't confirmed it yet. They just need to go ahead and confirm it. But I think it's definitely very reassuring that they're obviously taking a lot of time to put into this game, a lot of resources to put into this game, with them hiring big talent, especially from Rockstar. That's one of the, golden boy studios, if you will, one of the, better studios I can't remember the last time they came out with a game that wasn't good, right? And they got a major developer from that studios to come over and to allegedly help on this Fable game. So I think it's definitely huge news. And this is just continuing on to all the other stories that we've heard of them hiring people. So hopefully they don't stop anytime soon. The more talent they get on it, the better this next game, hopefully Fable 4 is going to be.
No, that's great. That's a really great point. Jamie, I want to get your opinion on this before we move on to now there's like I said, this is a two-tier topic. And I talked about the hiring because, that some people might say, well, that's kind of boring. They just hired 2 new people. Big deal. The second part of the story is the juicy part, but keeping with, to keep it fair, get your opinion on it. What are your personal thoughts on the sheer amount of talent that is seemingly coming over on a weekly basis to Playground Games? The question you may want to ask yourself is, what the hell are they working on over there that's attracting all this talent?
When it was announced that they were making an RPG, I was thinking, oh, well, it's going to take a while, and we'll probably hear, at some point about some people joining. But it seems like every week we're hearing about new people joining Playground Games RPG team. And the most exciting thing about that is, for me, is that there's been a lot of hirings from Rocksteady and Rockstar North.
Yes.
2 of my favorite studios, and those are like 2 big storytellers. And for me, that's the most important thing. And you don't get writers and creators from teams like that if it's not going to be for a big project.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And all these hirings just point to a massive project, because Playground Games is a massive studio. Like, it's not some like tiny little team in the middle of a shed. It's like it's a huge team that they know what they're doing. And every single week it's like, oh, this developer's joining this team, and as much as I'm looking forward to seeing what they do next gen for Forza Horizon 5, like, the RPG is going to be something else, because you don't get all that talent for no reason.
No, that's a great point, and I like that you focused on who and where they're getting the talent from, and those 2 particular studios have worked on big open world games, and the developers are just not someone, they're all lead people that are coming over to help manage this whatever they're currently working on. So let's move on to the juicy part of this second topic now. Obviously, there's been a tremendous amount of news for Xbox in the last couple of days for a lot of good and bad reasons. But the most exciting now, our good friend Klobrille, who again, he doesn't consider himself to be an Xbox insider. I mean, he said that, but he comes away with such great information that if you're not following this dude and you're an Xbox fan, I say shame on you, because he drops nuggets almost on a weekly basis. And he dropped something that has the interwebs literally catching fire when he posted a picture of Playground Games character concept art test. Now, the art test was done a few months ago. Now, again, I said this before. I don't think it was like two or 3 months ago. When they say months, I honestly believe that it was months ago. So we could be talking about 8, 9, maybe even double-digit months. And the screenshot that came up was, to say the least, very Fable-esque. And there's a particular site that has more photos that are up. And if you compare, someone did the comparison in the video, and I'm actually going to add it to the show notes so you guys can check it out. I sent it to both Jamie and, of course, Zemi, where they show a side-by-side screen of Fable, of one of the Fable games, of the character standing in front of this cottage, and then they show the artwork of what they're currently working on or allegedly working on, and they look very similar. Like, I mean, there are some differences, but to be honest, it does look really close. Now, I know for a fact I'm not the only one who thinks that this picture that everyone has been talking about is right out of Fable. Needless to say, it looks fantastic nonetheless. But What's more important is the backdrop that's being depicted. And it seems to me, anyway, to be in an era that looks very similar to The Witcher 3, where there's a really great chance that it's gonna include magic, sorceries, monsters, and lots of creatures to take on, as well as NPCs to meet and work with. Now, at this point, the concept artwork, guys, we can only speculate. And the lead, and again, if you look at the artwork, we're not sure if the lead protagonist is a female, because that's what's in the picture, or is this a create your own character? We don't know. But the concept art of I doubt that it's just some NPC character that's holding a sword, but I can tell you that there is a potential. Again, this is my speculation, so don't put this on paper and say, boom, said it, he got it confirmed. We don't know if this picture is maybe of a character that you can add to your party, kind of like in Dragon Age Inquisition, where you can make your own parties. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening here. I'm saying it's potentially what this character could be. But here's the most important thing. I posed this question to you guys. From the early concept artwork that we've just seen, what are your thoughts on Playground Games' next big AAA RPG? Are you convinced that it is in fact Fable 4? I'll go to Zemi first on this.
Yes, I'm convinced it's it's I don't know if it's gonna be called Fable 4. I hope it is, because I would love to see the number 4 after the word Fable. But I think it's definitely Fable. I mean, it looks so much like Fable. It literally screams Fable off of my computer screen. It has to be Fable. And just looking at the screenshot, just to speculate a little bit, it definitely looks like it's an older time, like you were saying. It might be set during the time of Fable 1. It might be set a little bit earlier. Just looking at the sword, looking at like what the characters are wearing, it definitely seems like it is just pure medieval. I don't think it doesn't really look like there's going to be any guns, like how there were in
Fable 3, yeah,
Fable 2 and Fable 3.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then as far as like the female character, well, if you look at the other screenshot with him standing in front of the house, there is a male character there as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it's probably going to go along the lines of what previous Fable games have done, allowing you to select a male or female character. I wouldn't imagine that they're gonna go super in depth with allowing you to change different facial features and stuff. They're probably just going to have two pre-selected characters, one being a male, one being a female. And then obviously as you play the game, you're going to be able to add on different hair colors, different things to make your character, you'll be able to customize your character and stuff. And then I would imagine still, you do good things, your character is going to look like an angel. You do bad things, he's going to start looking like a demon, like in all the previous Fable games. But from what I've seen, it definitely looks like Fable, and I'm really, really excited with the approach that they're going. I'm definitely happy that they're not going further down the line of like technological like innovation and stuff, like kind of how they've done previously, with the first game being medieval, the second game being like 1600s. And then the Fable 3 being at the dawn of the industrial age. I'm glad that they're taking a step back and going to what the very first Fable game kind of did, instead of like putting us in like a Fable with tanks, if you will. Obviously they wouldn't do that, but I'm glad that they're stepping back in the timeline of the game series.
No, that's a great point, because I would be I gotta be honest with you. If Fable had tanks, I would be very upset.
Yeah.
I think everybody and their mother would be upset, because we don't want tanks or flying things in Fable. Maybe hot air balloons to get around. Maybe, I don't know. But I like how you point, how you kind of just tiptoed around the landmines that could potentially ruin this game if in fact there were tanks, but there wouldn't be.
No, there won't.
But Jamie, I want to get your opinion on this. Now, obviously, we know you're a huge Fable fan, just pretty much everybody here. Did your meter go past 11 and break when you seen these early artwork screenshots? Well, not screenshots; their artwork leaked.
Yeah, I mean, this screamed controlled league all over the place. It's almost as if it's almost as if Playground Games like dramatically tripped over on purpose, and art went everywhere. And all the concept art to me reminds me of early 1500s clothing. So think around the Tudors, like Henry VIII style clothing. It's something you don't really see in RPGs because Fable 3 leaned heavily towards going from fantasy to a tiny bit of steampunk. And that's what people didn't like about that.
Yes, that's a great point. Yeah.
While Fable 2 was like darker, it was like more fantasy based, and the first one was literally like, The Hobbit. But this, it screams darker tone to me. Now, here's the thing: there's people on one side of the fence when it comes to Fable. They want a serious Fable that's like The Witcher, and there's a group of people that say they want a classic Fable that's got the humor. And I say, why can't it be both? Why can't you have a serious Witcher style game, like Witcher style as in storytelling, but yet still have humor? They can do that, and all the style and all the the sword art and stuff. Like people keep saying it's not Fable, right? And not once has Playground Games said this is a new IP. Not once. And whenever Aaron Greenberg's talked about it, whenever Phil's talked about this RPG, they just refer to it as an RPG. No one ever says new IP. So yeah, I personally think it can't be anything other than Fable.
I mean, listen, again, we could only speculate, and I think at the end of the day, I mean, we all want, and I think I could speak for the community when I say we all want this series to continue. We all want, I don't care if you reboot the series and give it a more serious tone, and then have some humor sewn into the lining of it. That's fine. If you want to call it Fable 4, I don't know how they do that. I'm going to be honest with you, because 3 took it really further into where a lot of people didn't like. So maybe they don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I would prefer them just to reboot the series. I think that you leave Fable 1, 2, and 3 where it was, and we enjoyed it for what it is, and you bring what made the Fable franchise fun and interesting. And then you bring that back. You take some of that with you, and then you give it that more Witcher, seriousness. And I think like you said, Jamie, I think that's a great point. Why can't we have both? And I think that you logistically can. It just has to be done where it makes sense. You understand what I'm saying? Like when you're cutting a dragon's head off, you don't want to have someone make a fart joke. I'm just saying it wouldn't work for me, and I don't think it'd work for most of the community. But what you guys said is very, very interesting. And look, all I can say is that as the years go by, as we get closer to Scarlet, you know what? Before we move on to the next topic, Semi, I want you to put this theory of yours out there. I want you to talk about what we talked privately. Unless you don't want to, it's fine. But no. You had an amazing theory, and I think that we should hear it from you first before if someone else goes and says that they talked about it first.
Well, this theory, remember, guys, this is only a theory, but and I've been wrong many times before. But part of me is kind of thinking that at E3 2020, they're going to announce this new Fable game as a launch title for the new Xbox Scarlet. And the reason I say that is because, many years ago, obviously I believe it was Lionhead Studios. That's right. They went out of, business, and Microsoft obviously acquired everything, the Fable, everything like that. And, they've had Playground Games for a while. We don't know how long this Fable game's been, in the works. And, specifically with The Last of Us, they, went out and they started hiring some people. And then a few months later, we now know that Last of Us is going to come out early in 2020. So I don't know. Part of me is really thinking that it's possibly going to release as a launch title for the Xbox Scarlet, because not only is that going to be a huge, banging piece of news during E3 2020 and get a lot of headlines, that's going to get a lot of people hyped, and possibly some of the people, some of the old Xbox fans that transferred over to PlayStation early on this generation, maybe rethinking about revisiting the platform. So yeah, I mean that's just in a short little spew. That's just kind of the theory. But I will say I'd completely disagree with both of you. I want this game to be Fable. I don't want it to be Witcher. I want it to have that same witty British humor. Obviously, I don't want any slapstick stuff or any, just really out there, kind of comedy. I want it to be the same very witty, very British humor that the series is known for, because, without that, it's not Fable. And I mean, if you want to play a Fable-like game that's more like The Witcher 3, go play Greedfall, but whenever I want to play Fable, I want to play Fable.
Well, listen, again, it's going to be very interesting to see what route they take, if in fact this is Fable, or more specifically, whether or not this is going to be a launch title. Because I got news for you. Your theory holds up, and it really does point to why Microsoft and Playground Games refuse to even talk about what they're working on, because obviously they don't want to spoil any surprises think about it. Think how close to the vest they're playing this. We have zero confirmation, right? And even when you ask, like when Phil has been asked, he laughs because he knows the answer, but he knows he can't say anything about it. And could you, just to think about this for a second, because I'm getting goosebumps just talking about this. Could you imagine if your launch lineup, just imagine this for a second. Scarlet comes out in 12 months. We know it's probably going to be out. Both consoles are going to be out in November. More specifically, we have a good idea that, they notoriously release stuff in November. We're talking about Microsoft. Could you imagine if your launch lineup is Halo Infinite, Fable 4, Forza Motorsport 8, and possibly something like a Killer Instinct 2? Holy shit. I mean, if that's not the lineup of lineups and that doesn't get you goosebumps right here live on the air, I don't know, man. Maybe you're not as big a fan as I am, but that would be epic. That would be the way you want to start the next generation, and that would put the exclamation point on the new hardware from the minute it's available for people to buy. But I want to move on to the next topic, because we could talk about Fable all day. And this one is a little bit of a disappointing topic for me personally. Now, in a story, like I said, that I find to be very disappointing, during a recent interview, Phil Spencer says that VR is not a focus for Project Scarlet. And, back in 2016, before the launch of the Xbox One X, here's what Phil Spencer had to say on the subject of VR. He says, "We're not focused on a first-party VR hardware device right now. The best place for VR innovation is the PC. I think developers should still go and focus on PC, because I think that's a great place to innovate. What we're doing is we're able to take some of the PC innovation that we see and bring it to the console space to enable those magical experience on Scorpio when it launches." That's what he had to say back then. Now, we've also heard Phil Spencer say that, and a lot of people were like, well, wait a second, where's my VR for the Xbox One X? And they backed off on that because, as Phil has stated in numerous interviews, more specifically with the Giant Bomb interview from, I believe it was the 2018 E3 interview, where he doesn't like the fact that VR has a lot of wires, and you have to set up all of these lighthouses and some of the PC VR. Like, for instance, I haven't support PlayStation VR. I have the second. I actually bought it twice. I love it so much. But it's interesting that back then they backed off on it, and he said, we're not a big fan of the wires, and I don't want to have people with wires all over the place. That was his main gripe. Now, fast forward to XO19, which just happened a couple of weeks ago, and this was the response when asked about the quote of 2016. And he says this, and this is Phil Spencer. "Yeah, Microsoft's executive vice president of gaming acknowledged, "I don't love my quote from 2016 there because I'm not trying to demean the work that people are currently doing in VR." Spencer went on to explain his change stance on VR, and this is what he had to say, guys. He says, "I have some issues with VR. It's isolating, and I think of games as a communal kind of together experience. We're responding to what our customers are asking for, and no one or nobody is asking for VR. The vast majority of customers we know, if they want a VR experience, there's places to go there and get it. We see the volume of PC and other places to get that experience." Spencer finished the VR subject by saying that VR is not Microsoft's focus. "I think we might get there eventually, but yeah, that's not where our focus is right now." Now, before I get you guys' opinion, I have to thank two people. First of all, let me see if I could find it, because I had this super chat came in when I was having ridiculous. Oh, I did find it. Okay, first of all, Star Hunter 29. I want to thank you for the outstanding and very generous $2 super chat. He says, "Happy Thanksgiving to everyone." And Crazy Mate Gaming, who just dropped an enormous and very generous $10 super chat. He says, "Maybe the reason why we won't talk about Fable is they're cutting it close and they don't want to announce it as a launch title because they might miss the mark." That's a great point. That is possible. Or they may be holding that because obviously, could you imagine the PR nightmare?
It would be embarrassing.
It would be embarrassing. It would be the Dragon game all over again.
Scalebound 2.0.
Yeah, it just, so that's a great point. First of all, thanks for being here, dude. Thank you for the amazing point. But of course, thank you for the generosity. Now, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be very frank, folks. I absolutely am totally from my core disappointed about this for many reasons. Now, I currently, like I said earlier, support PlayStation VR, and I get my currently get my PlayStation experience for VR from there, and that's great. I'm looking forward to PSVR 2.0 whenever that comes out for the PlayStation 5. I'm going to buy it. This particular holiday, depending, I have to make sure the money is right. I have been holding off buying the Oculus Quest. I just haven't had the money for it. And I think this holiday, I'm kind of treat myself to it. It's something that I really want because I don't have a rig. I'm not like a dealer or Colt Eastwood. I don't have a rig. I'm running this show off a Surface Pro 4. So I don't have a rig to run a VR, traditional VR headset. And because the Quest allows you to basically play VR without having to be hooked up to a PC is why I want to get it. So I'm disappointed that we're not going to get this. I know Phil has left the door open. I'm not crying wolf. I'm not crying foul that, oh my God, because again, the last couple of days since Phil made this statement, people have been running like crazy. Oh my God, the Xbox Scarlet is dead. It's ruined already because you don't have VR. Shame on you, Microsoft. Folks, I just want you to understand. Phil, I trust in Phil for a lot of reasons, but he is obviously the right hand of Satya Nadella for a reason. He's a numbers guy. And let's talk numbers for a second. Now, I know that you guys have heard that currently the PlayStation VR hardware is the best selling of all of the VR headsets available. That's what has been reported. Well, just for context, currently there's over 105 million PlayStation 4 consoles on the market or have been sold, right? Not shipped, sold. There are currently only, and I say only because I bought it twice, folks, so I'm a part of this demographic. 4.2 million PlayStation VR units have been sold in the world. Now, just for shits and giggles, let's cut it down to an even 100 million consoles. That's 4.2%. And when you add the other 5 to it, it brings it even lower to, like, let's say 3.8%. So 3.8% of the PlayStation Nation, which is the most popular console to date, right, in this generation, 3.8% is not is hard to market to. It's really hard. I mean, I understand PlayStation did it, and I applaud them because, like I said, I love it. I absolutely adore it. I don't use it every day, but I love VR. But it's only 3.8% at the end of the day. So the question here, and I'll pose this to the chat, and I'm going to pose this to the esteemed panel, and I'll start with Jamie on this one. Has Microsoft, more specifically Phil Spencer, made the right call when you talk about people are not asking for VR? Only, basically, he's saying only the hardcore is asking, and we are a low percentage, maybe 10, maybe 15% of the populace. Is this the right move for Microsoft?
Well, I have a video coming out about this tomorrow because I have a unique perspective on the whole thing because I can't use VR. But I know there's a market for it. So today I can say this. Phil is in the right and the wrong. The thing is, he says no one's wanting it. And obviously, he doesn't mean like no one wants it. So for instance, like for months, me and I must have seen a few other 100 people on Twitter claim and say it loud, not without whining, without complaining, without name calling, saying that they wanted the rest of the Kingdom Hearts games on Xbox, right? So people politely asked Square over and over and over without name calling, without being rude. And then it gets to XO19 and we get the Kingdom Hearts games announced for Xbox. People just need to do that with VR. If enough people ask, it'll happen. And the thing that I like to read in between lines, and Phil didn't actually say VR isn't happening. He just said it's not a focus. So I could see it being a thing where the Scarlet comes out and then boom, a year later, you can use the Scarlet with, the Windows 10 mixed reality headsets. But that said, he should be more open to VR because more platforms that use VR games, it increases the market and more games happen. I mean, look, now it's 2019 and only now we're seeing big games like Medal of Honor and the new Half-Life game. From now on, it's only going to get better for VR. And I'm saying this is someone that literally can't use VR. Like, I will be passing out the second I put a PlayStation. Like the last VR helmet.
So you get sick. You get sick.
Yeah, I've got like an ear thing. Like I've used Oculus, I've used PlayStation VR. Like it doesn't matter how good the headset is. Like I will be ill. Like the last thing I tried was the Batman demo on PlayStation VR. It was cool looking over the edge, seeing Gotham City, but like I nearly passed out.
Wow.
And I was standing still. But that's just an ear thing. I sometimes feel sick just playing regular first-person shooters. Not that often now, but VR is very hard to adjust to when you've got an ear thing. But anyway, I think he needs to address the VR situation better. Simply because, let's face it, they can pop games on the Xbox store, and let's say if you have a helmet and plug it in, like why can't that be a thing, really? Like there's all these like for instance, Half-Life Alyx got announced. It's going to be the biggest VR title. The thing is, you don't need a Steam VR helmet for that. You don't need a Vive. You can have an Oculus for that. You can have a Windows mixed reality headset for that. So why can't Microsoft's Xbox support different headsets and just let third-party developers make games? That's my thought on it.
No, I mean it's a fair point. I actually thought for sure. I never honestly believed that Microsoft was ever going to make an additional peripheral outside of a controller for a console. There's no doubt that they're gun shy from Kinect 2.0. Now, a lot of people didn't like Kinect. I happen to really enjoy it. It didn't work perfectly, but I can understand their mindset of not wanting to invest in development and putting resources and of course monies into something that's considered a niche market. I mean, anyone will tell you VR is not mainstream, and I'm not talking about these Labo VR, or I'm talking about the Samsung VR you can get for 15 cents. I'm talking about these big, heavy, expensive pieces of equipment that you have to spend a significant amount of money. I can see it. What I'm disappointed in is that, and again, this could change with an update. You have to understand the way that the Scarlet is being positioned, with its chipset and its UI. It's probably just an update of allowing a certain headset to work along with the Scarlet. I mean, again, I'm not a tech guy, so I can't say that for certain, but it seems as if it would be just not a flick of a switch, but they could leave it open for the ability to do VR. I expected them to team up with someone, maybe Oculus, and say, okay, yeah, Oculus could easily, produce, a branded VR headset for Xbox that it would say Xbox on it, and Microsoft wouldn't eat any of those costs, right? They wouldn't be developing it. It'd be coming from Oculus. But Zemi, let me ask your opinion on this. Now, and again, we talked privately, and I'm sure you're going to reiterate on what you talked about. But is Phil Spencer making the wrong decision by saying that no one is asking for VR? But more specifically, is it the right call for the Scarlet?
Well, I mean, I think like the wording is very important. Like Phil, I don't believe ever said no one is interested in VR. I think he said that the demand for it is not there, which are two different things. I could be wrong. I might have misread the quote, but I believe he said that the demand wasn't there, and I 100% agree with that. I really don't think that the demand is there. Specifically, you look at PlayStation, 4% of their user base purchased a VR headset. Obviously, a lot of people, a lot of the hardcore fans, some of the casuals are very, very into VR. They're the day one adopters. They want to get it. They want it on their favorite platform, which is the Xbox, and you can't blame them for that. But still to this day, VR is still a niche. It's still a niche thing. And I think Xbox wants to focus on the more important things for them this generation. And I really don't see how VR is or should be the more important thing. I think ensuring you have a crap ton of first party games is definitely more important. I think making sure that xCloud is working, that they go out to all different devices, possibly even bring it to an Xbox One console. I think that's more important. I think that the launch of their Scarlet console, making sure that they can eat up the cost of however much money they're going to lose per each console sale, I think that's more important as well. And I agree with you guys. I think that it would be a better path for them to take if they would adopt taking on Oculus and just creating the software. But I'm not really a super big tech guy. I don't know how much money that would cost. I don't know the details, or would they I just don't know how creating software, adapting that into the current operating system for Xbox. I don't know how much that would cost to create. I don't know how much time that would take. I don't know that different stuff. Obviously Xbox does, and I'm sure there's a lot of smart guys there. I'm sure they thought about that, and still they're looking to delay it. I think one of the biggest mistakes Xbox made here was putting the idea of VR in people's brains, for
and
the
then pulling it away. Yes.
And then pulling it away. I think that is the biggest mistake Phil has made here. I don't think Phil is making any mistake by saying, hey, we're not going to do VR. I think his mistake started in 2016 whenever he said that they were looking to do it. You know what I mean? And so for that reason, that's the big mistake that I think was made here. But I'm definitely in agreement with Phil. I really don't think that the demand is there. I would, rather them focus on other things. And I know a lot of people are going to be saying, well, Microsoft is, a $1 trillion company. They make a, crap ton of money, all this different stuff. Xbox Game Pass is blowing up, but the point's still there. Xbox is one part of Microsoft, right? They're only going to get so much money every single year. And, they have gotten a lot of studios. They've bought in a lot of studios. God only knows how much money they paid to get all those Japanese games over to the platform. Much less, Crossfire X and
having Remedy actually make the single player campaign for them. So that's got to cost them some bucks too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're $1 trillion company, but they still have a lot of cost, and, they still have to pay people. They still want to be a profitable company at the end of the year. So, it's easy to say, well, Xbox has the money, they should do this because I want it. It's a different thing to say, well, if Xbox does this, then that's going to take away from something else they could do. And for me personally, I would rather see first-party games, ensuring that the next console is as strong as it can be for the next release for 2020, and making sure that the xCloud works on all platforms, and that the servers go up every single place possible to ensure that it's a good service. I would rather them spend money on that rather than VR. And I'm sure that they're going to come out with it sometime this next generation. It's just kind of been put on the back burner a little bit, it seems like.
I mean, listen, he did leave the door open. He didn't say VR is never coming to an Xbox console, and more specifically, the Scarlet. So, I mean, it is open. I think that you have to reach out. I mean, listen, if you are a fan like me and you are disappointed, I think that if you want to let Phil know that VR is something that you're interested as a customer, he's very active on social media, more specifically Twitter. And he does answer people. Now, I'm saying that don't be a jerk and curse the guy out, because I wouldn't respond to you either. But if you do have a concern that, yes, VR may be for you, everyone in the community should reach out to him. Do a poll. Encourage your fellow community members to close ranks and in one big voice say, yes, we want VR. And maybe, just maybe, he'll listen and like, you know what? I think now the people are talking about it, because maybe this was a breadcrumb, right? He says, well, I don't think a lot of people are, I see the numbers. I see what's going on with Sony's thing. And maybe people aren't asking for VR. Or maybe people weren't asking for VR. Maybe people were talking about VR in their social media circles, but no one actually said to anybody in Microsoft, no, we do. I'm right here. I'm a customer. I'm a day one Scarlet buyer, but I want VR. I think that if we do that, and we all do it, and you retweet and you favorite and you comment, maybe we can get the message through that, yes, VR is something that we all want. I mean, again, do it politely, do it professionally, do it in a way that, if someone wrote something nasty to you, you'd be offended. So don't do that. But let's move on to the next topic, because the next one is also concerning Phil Spencer once again. Now, according to a new interview with Phil, he stated that the Xbox Game Studio, which is currently 15 first-party studios, according to him, he wants to release 4 to 5 big games each and every year. And as we know, Microsoft is giving those studios creative freedom on what they want to develop. An example of this is Obsidian's Entertainment recently released AAA RPG, The Outer Worlds. And at XO19, they announced the survival game Grounded, that some people were like, oh, it's cartoony, it's off my radar. And some people were like, well, you know what, just a second. It looks kind of cool, looks interesting. And only 15 people are developing it, so maybe it might be for them. Well, here's some of the more interesting quotes that Phil had to say. First, before I get to those quotes, I have to thank Philly Eagle for being here, and also dropping an outstanding and very generous $5 super chat. He says, have to leave early on exit. I want to wish everyone a safe and wonderful holiday. Enjoy the time with your loved ones. Appreciate them while they are here. Great point, dude. Yes, you be safe. And you, of course, have an amazing holiday weekend as well. But let's get into the actual quotes from Phil Spencer. He starts out by saying, having a steady stream of great outgoing games on our Xbox platform, as well as the Xbox Game Pass, is essential for us. Our goal is to be able to bring 4 to 5 big games to the platform every year. We don't have an imposed formula in terms of team size, style of play, ranking, or genre. We give our teams lots of creative freedom on what they want to create. We let our studios decide which franchises they want to work on. More and more of the leaders of our teams meet and discuss opportunities between studios, so that perhaps a certain franchise belonging to one studio is taken and assumed by the other. That's interesting. These are opportunities we want to seize without feeling forced. Now, when you say big games will be a subject of many opinions. depending on who you are, some people will say, well, a big game to me, boom, is a AAA monster. It has to be. The word big leads the charge. And I don't necessarily believe that. I think that assuming that a big game has to have a AAA attached to it, I think is not thinking so much outside of the box, because Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which is coming out next year, in my opinion, is a big game. And matter of fact, it's probably going to be a very highly rated and beloved game, because the first one was, and this one looks to up the ante in every way. But as we know, and again, I'm not saying this for the first time. I've said this on this show. We've read it. We've heard people say it. All of those 15 studios aren't just working on one game. They're working on a steady flow of multiple projects to have this 4 to 5 big games coming out each and every year. Now, here's my question to the panel. And of course, I always pose this to the chat because I want to hear what you guys have to say. When you read this interview, what are your theories on exactly what these 4 to 5 big games per year starting in 2020 are? And do you think that they have to have a huge A times 3 next to it to be considered a big game? And I'll start with Zemi on this.
Well, just to start off with I guess the second question, does it have to, be a AAA huge, highly budgeted game to be considered big? I personally, I don't think so, but the language there, is different for everyone. Some people think a big game is like Red Dead Redemption, and then other people would consider a big game being Crackdown 3. Crackdown 3 literally took me 10 hours to beat. I mean, so what exactly there is your definition of big? It varies from every single person, but for me personally, I would say regardless of how long the game is, to a certain extent, and how many people worked on it, I don't really think kind of falls into the metric of what should be considered big. For me personally, my game of the year this year is probably going to be A Plague Tale: Innocence.
I thought you were going to say
that.
Yeah.
Took the game took me maybe 20 hours to beat. It is not a AAA game in any single form of the word. I wouldn't even necessarily even say that it's a big game to someone, but it is a really, really good game nonetheless. But I don't want to get too tied up on the language of big. I don't, big or small or whatever. I regardless of if it's a AAA, if it's a AA, that doesn't take away from it still possibly being a quality game. And I think that that's the most important thing. I think that Phil should have probably said high quality, 4 or 5 high quality games instead of big games, because the language is so different to everyone.
Right.
And then as far as 2020 goes, like the 4 to 5 games that I think they're going to start off with is probably going to be Halo Infinite, Forza 8, of course. I think Bleeding Edge is coming out early in 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
March something, I think.
Yeah, so that would be one. I think Wastelands 3 is probably going to drop in 2020 as well. And then I've already said it before, and I'll say it again. I think Fable stands a pretty good chance of surprising us maybe in a Xbox Scarlet launch of in 2020 as well. So if I was gonna gamble, I would say that those would probably be some very high likely games that might come out as their first 4 to 5 games in 2020.
Well, I'm going to say that according to what we know about coming out in 2020, I think they have 12 titles. Now, of course, they all range in size, scope, team size, financial investment, but 12 games. That's a lot of games in 2020. Now, some of them, of course, are from recently acquired titles. Like Psychonauts 2 is going to be on. It's going to be a multi-plat, because before they picked up, obviously, that studio, before they picked up Double Fine, more specifically, that was already going to come out on multiple consoles. So I mean, but 12 games. That 12. Yeah.
Let me jump back in. Well, another thing though too that I actually just thought about is whenever he says releasing 4 to 5 big games a year, is he specifically solely talking about games like first party games being created by the like the 15, 14 studios under the Xbox Game Studios, or is he also talking about second party games like the game that Dotnod is creating, Crossfire X. That is a, technically a first party game, sort of, but
right. Well, it's being published by
exclusive.
Microsoft, so it's not being
exclusive.
published on anybody. But yeah, that's actually a fantastic question that unfortunately I don't want to assume anything, but I know that second party. If there's one thing that I look back at to the Xbox 360 days that just jumps off the page when you talk about, I'm not talking about the Red Ring of Death either, because that when you say it's 360, that's what pops off for people. For me personally, it was the second party deals, the exclusive deals that they made, where you got games like Dead Rising and Lost Planet and so many other games that were not on the PlayStation 3 at the time. And that's what made the 360 such a great system. And you look at the roles reversed in 2019, 2018, 2017. Look at what Sony did. Sony took that exact science, took a page right out of the playbook from the Xbox 360, and not only did they have strong first-party games, but they had all of these killer second-party games. Now, they weren't technically listed as exclusives, but you could only get them on the PlayStation brand. And I mean, I'm talking about games like Neo and Persona and a lot of these Japanese games that eventually will be now coming over to the Xbox because of the relationships that Phil is forging in the Asian market. But I mean, that's what won Sony this generation, because they had games that the Xbox didn't have. So they're currently working on that, from what we understand. But I don't know. Again, that the way that he described it, I'm reading it verbatim. I'm not adding anything to it. This is directly from the article. I can't say what would incorporate the what would be a part of those 4 to 5 big games. Are they Microsoft Game Studios only, or are they second party deals like the Donut game, which I think is going to be a big deal? It's a fair question. It's very interesting, and we're probably going to have to revisit it. But Jamie, I want to get to your opinion on this. Now, when he says, 4 to 5 big games. Now, I know Lansville Paul, who's always here in the chat, and I want to thank him for being here, says that he didn't actually say AAA games, and you are correct in saying so. So for me, maybe I'm assuming that when he says big games, he meant AAA, and if that's how it came across, I don't necessarily put an A next to a game for me as a gamer. But in your opinion, what are your thoughts on his comments regarding the 4 to 5 big games per year that they want to do moving forward?
I don't like to get too hung up on the whole, is a game a AA? Is it a AAA? If a game's good, it's good. I don't really care who made it or how big it is. But when he said that, you have to look at the Outer Worlds. And yes, the Outer Worlds was originally with, Private Division and Obsidian before they bought them, but it kind of makes sense though, because the Outer Worlds is not a huge game. It's a good game. And if you look at all the upcoming games like Wasteland 3, you've got Psychonauts 2, Ori 2, and then like Zemi said, like Dotnod's next game is a second party game. And a lot of people thought Microsoft would stop doing the second party stuff with all these studios. Well, maybe they're just going to manage it better, because, we don't need another scale bound situation. So this tells me that Microsoft's just going to be more careful with second party stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it includes small games, big games, medium games. We could have games possibly Witcher size all the way down to Psychonauts. And to be honest, as long as the game's good, I don't care. I just feel too many people get hung up on the A next to it. Like, Ori in the Blind Forest isn't a AAA game, but it's fantastic. And if we're going to get quality games, I don't really care how big or small they are. But I do think it will include second-party stuff, because each studio is working on multiple games. But to get 5 games a year, and games take years to make, I think that's going to include a lot of second-party stuff.
That's a good point. Yeah,
because let's say 6 of the studios are making 2 games each, and all games take, let's say, 3 years to make. That doesn't equal 5 games a year. So that tells me we will see a lot more second-party stuff, because there's a lot of third-party developers out there that still need funding and stuff, you know. So we could see games from anyone because no one saw this Don't Nod game coming at all.
No.
And you know, it was a nice surprise. I like Don't Nod. So personally, yeah, I think it includes small games, big games, second party games. And to be honest, I think that's exciting because again, anything could be announced.
No, that's a great point, and you don't know. I mean, I mean, for all we know, I mean, could you imagine if you know, you start to see companies like Capcom who were tremendously supportive in the 360 days? You know, we know what they've done with Dead Rising, but could you imagine if they decided to reboot Lost Planet and make it a second party exclusive? Now, I know a lot of people don't like that, but I'm just saying that's the listen, folks. That's the way the world works. Sony has been doing it to great success, and if Microsoft is smart, they're going to look at what what Sony has done very well, I might add, and take a page back out of that playbook and say, you know what, let's start. You know, we have 15 studios. They're working on multiple projects per studio, but games, like you said, Jamie, take sometimes 3, 4, 5 years to come out. And we can't depend. We don't want to put that. We don't want to put too much pressure on these developers. We want them to let them develop at their own speed, so the game comes out and it's good. So that's where these second party deals come in, and they can mix and match with bigger titles, smaller titles, medium sized titles in there, and they're all going to be under the exclusive banner. Now, again, an exclusive banner, depending on who you ask, is, you know, oh, I could play it on PC, so it's not exclusive. I'm not even going to get into that pond, because if you can't play it on the PlayStation whatever and the Switch whatever, then it's exclusive. That's the end of the story. But anyway, this has been a great topic. But you know what? I want to segue into a topic that talking about doubles and triples A's. Now, with every generation, a gaming generation, of course, there's always been a running narrative that used to make the headlines and the clickbait of the YouTube content creation community, as well as the console war or plastic war heroes of social media. And one of the most prominent narratives has been the worth of a game based on being a single A, double A, or triple A produced title. Now, as we know, the A attached to a studio and or game comes from the size of the developer, how much money is being invested to make the game that's in development, and the marketing budget that will be used to promote said new title. Well, our good friend Klobrille has once again made some news. And we know him, of course, from Twitter fame. We talked about him earlier in the show. And I thought this particular comment from him would make a fantastic topic of original discussion. And here's what he had to say. You know, he says this: as an old school gamer, I can't stress enough how incredibly tired I am about people only caring about big AAA games these days. Living example, Nintendo. Highly polished, mid-sized games make an incredible lineup. That's what I want from Xbox Game Studios. Diversity, colors, uniqueness. Now, it's a very fair statement, and based on what we've seen at XO19 in London, we're going to be getting exactly that in starting next year, and I'm very excited. But, you know, here's the question to the chat, and of course, my esteemed panel. Do you agree with Klobrille's statement that more importantly, are you excited that the next generation for the Xbox brand is going to feature all of the above, meaning single A, double A, and triple A, and even quadruple A games? And I'll go to the elusive gamer, Jamie. What are your thoughts on this original topic, and what are your opinions on what Klobrille had to say?
Like I was saying, like I personally, like, how many years into the generation are we now? 6. And
Yeah.
it's been 6 long years of people comparing Metacritic scores to, is a game double A, is a game triple A, is it single A, is it B? And you know, I just got sick of it. Like I say, if someone wants to enjoy a game, if they're enjoying it, who cares what it gets scored? Who cares what double A or triple A is? Because one of my favorite games this generation is Alien Isolation. That game is not AAA. It's not. But it's very refined. It's amazing. And no game this generation has given me that experience. But I would never take a game like that and put more money into it because I think it would maybe make it a bit shallow. They'd probably put more action into it. I think we should all move away from the whole, okay, Microsoft needs to announce this realistic super third person, AAA game. And I'm like, why is that the narrative? Would I like a third party? So I should say a third person game that looks realistic and gritty. Yeah, cool. But the thing is, Nintendo make these games that are colorful, vibrant, and they sell millions upon millions. And is Mario Odyssey a AAA game? Not really. But is it amazing? Yeah. It's pretty
absolutely
amazing.
is. Yes, I would agree.
Like, Nintendo doesn't come out with these games that's on the Witcher level. Breath of the Wild is huge, but like their games do not contain the detail of like most modern games, but nobody cares. But when it comes to Microsoft, it has to be realistic, third person over the shoulder.
Or it's an epic fail, right?
Yeah,
right.
or to fail. And I'm just sick of it. It's like, look at Gears 5. I think Gears 5 is bloody amazing. But here's the problem. People hated on it because of its Metacritic score. Like, is that where we're at now?
It's still an 84. I thought an 84 was a good score, but what do I know?
Yeah, I mean, since when is a game in rated 80s a bad game? And then like I say, Death Stranding got the same score on like the day the reviews came out, and people were loving it. And then when it got 1 point higher, Gears went from being an 84, that's the worst game ever, to trash.
Right.
And then as soon as Death Stranding got rated to 83, a point below Gears, it was like, oh well, who cares about Metacritic? No one should care about Metacritic. It's something I've just gotten sick and tired this generation. We have threads all over the place, be it Reset Era, Reddit, whatever. People just talking about scores in AAA all the time, and I've just had enough of it. Like whenever people bring it up and try and argue about it, I just ignore it now because, like look at the Outer Worlds. The Outer Worlds is not this shining beacon AAA RPG, but it doesn't need to be.
Exactly.
It's a fantastic RPG. It's like, also look at Star Wars Fallen Jedi. That's an amazing game, but that doesn't scream the polish of something like The Witcher 3 or Red Dead Redemption, but it doesn't have to. And that's why I think, like, moving it to the next generation, people need to stop counting down the days and hours towards review scores dropping and just play the damn game.
That's a great point. I mean, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, my game of the year is probably, I mean, I've said it already 10 times. I'm not going to say it again because I'm going to do my game of the year show towards the end of 2019. Jedi Fallen Order is very high on the list. I beat that game. I actually destroyed that game. I'm one achievement away from 1,000 out of 1,000. I put 40, I want to say 50 plus hours into it because I beat it. I beat it, but I went back into, mop up all the achievements and find everything I needed to find. I thoroughly enjoyed that game. And no, maybe it's not a AAA game, but like I do like what you have to say. It doesn't have to be. As long as you're having fun, who gives a shit at the end of the day? Zemi, I want to get your opinion on this. Now, I know that we talked about it in the prior topic, and I may have should have started with this topic and kind of reverse it. But needless to say, when you talk about A's right next to a game, and you talk about your game, what potentially your game of the year is not a AAA game. Neither was Ninja Theory's Hellblade. Right, that wasn't a AAA game. That was made by a handful. I think it was 20-something people. It was put together with with glue and sticks, and they made one of the most incredible experiences that I think you could possibly you could play. Not because of how it looked. How it looked was outstanding and really second to none this generation. But what the context of it and and how the playthrough was different, whether you played it wearing headphones, giving you the sense of exactly what's going on in this character's head, and how people experience that form of mental disorder, as from what you're just seeing it on the screen, playing it with your with your TV speakers, and very few games have ever in the history of gaming done such a feat, and they did that. And they did it on a budget that would be considered single A, but the game in scope, size, and quality screamed AAA. So when you hear this, when you hear about these A's, do you agree with Klobrille when he says that he's actually sick and tired of people attaching A's to games, whether and really just voting on whether or not it's good based on an A and not the game itself?
Yeah, well, I mean, so just stepping back a little bit and just looking at it from outside the box, why do we, just to begin with, why do we call a game a AAA, a double A, single A? Well, we usually honestly never really even refer to games that are double A or triple A or single A. We usually just talk about the double A games because that's the best, right? But why do we even call it that? I mean, in my opinion, I think it's just a marketing ploy. I think it's a fancy word that that people slap onto a game to drive hype and get more people to purchase the title. Obviously it's not a sign of necessarily quality, because you can, you take a double A game and a triple A game, and the double A game could be absolutely a higher quality, more enjoyable, funner game to play. So, whenever you're talking about double A, triple A, whatever A, for me personally, I think the double A is just a fancy term to drive sales of big games that took millions of dollars to make, regardless of if they're good or not. I think it's just a marketing ploy. And for that reason, I don't think it really has any bearing whatsoever of what makes a good game. Like you said, I mean, for so far as it stands right now, my favorite game this entire year was a Plague Tale. I don't even know where it would fall.
I haven't
if it would
played
be
it
a
yet. I'm
AA
waiting for a sale, dude. I
single A.
want to play that so bad. It looks amazing.
Let me put it like this. It is the same, in my opinion, it is the same quality that you would get out of a PlayStation exclusive. Right.
Wow.
Out of like, it's not as long, it's not as big, it's not as grand, but in my opinion, it's the same type of quality and the type of gameplay that you would get out of one of those really good Sony exclusives. And I almost never get to play those. So a Plague Tale was a really big treat. Fantastic story, fantastic characters, fantastic graphics. Gameplay was really, really good. They didn't really do anything absolutely new or amazing, but it was all around a absolutely phenomenal game. One of my most hyped games, this year, so far, hopefully it comes out soon, is 12 Minutes. That was shown off at this year's
that
E3.
looks fantastic, dude.
It looks absolutely amazing, but I tell you what, it's not a AAA game. So AAA games, it doesn't matter. I think it's just a marketing ploy. And, I judge my games off of quality. Right. I don't judge my games on how many people create them. Of course, you're always going to have those really big studios like Rockstar who create these absolutely fantastic worlds to go around and play in. And those are AAA, great AAA experiences. But that doesn't mean that all AAA games are going to be great experiences. There's a lot of them out there that just suck. And there's a lot of AA games that suck. And there's a lot of single A games that suck. But there's a lot of AA, single A games that are absolutely fantastic as well. So I think I think people should judge games on their actual merits and not on some, term that we just slap onto a title to show how many people made it or how much money it cost to make.
I mean, those are all great points. I mean, let me just say this, again, play games based on what you like. I don't think that, I think that we've all been gaming long enough to know whether a game is going to be for you. I don't think that certainly I don't believe that an A attached to a game, whether that be 3 times the A or 4 times the A or no A at all, make it a good, whack, or great game. I think that it's entirely up to the eye of the beholder, which is going to be the purchaser, which is, of course, the consumer. And, obviously, if you have doubts about a game, I would say don't even look at social media. Watch a video. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we don't get demos anymore where we can really play, unfortunately, like we did back in the PS3 and 360 era. But I mean, don't race to buy that $60 game if you don't know anything about it. Do your due diligence and read not reviews but opinions. I love when a place like Gaming Bolt does a piece on a game that's coming out, and they give you all the gist of the game. They interview the director and maybe some of the actors, and there's no attached to it. It's just a quality news source writing about a game that people might be interested in. If you are on the fence about a game, obviously, and it's going to be in Game Pass, and there's your demo if you have Game Pass, because you don't have to buy the game. Technically, you can play it for 5 minutes and say, yeah, it sucks, I don't like it. But if it's on an outside platform that doesn't offer this kind of a service, do your due diligence as a consumer. You know what I'm saying? Don't go based on what's hot right now on social media. But I gotta say, this has been an amazing show, regardless of the slight. I don't know, I think I was off the air for like 8 minutes, and thank you guys for being the professionals that you are, and just talking about everything that's important in the world, which is Thanksgiving, which is tomorrow, and Star Wars, and whatever else you guys talked about. I'll hear it on the replay. So thank you for continuing the show while I was bumped off of my 5G internet, which I don't understand how that happened. I want to thank everybody in the chat. We had 120 people watching live, and that's pretty impressive considering that most people are traveling. Hopefully this does get a lot of views and people enjoy what we brought to the table today. I want to thank all of the super chat that came in. The generosity, again, always completely blows me away, and I expect nothing, but I'm always surprised when someone even drops a $2 super chat. Every bit of it counts, and all of those monies that are collected after, of course, YouTube takes their 31%. Mrs. Boomstick and I have something really planned, very special for the community come Christmas, and I'm going to be making an announcement once we hit when we hit December. And speaking of super chat, 9 Lives 210 drops a $2 super chat, and he says, awesome show, Boom. Well, thank you for your generosity, but more importantly, thank you for being here as always. And of course, I couldn't do the show without the talented panel I have in front of me. So Zemi Games, let's get everybody out of here and start this holiday weekend off correct. You bring a lot to each show that you're on. Of course, you started with me on Breakfast with Boom. Now you have moved on to a permanent position here on the Xbox Factor podcast, and we love having you because, of course, you are an Xbox dude. Please tell everyone where they can follow you on Twitter, but more importantly, check out your outstanding YouTube channel.
Thank you so much, Boom. Super great show, as always. Great opinions. So thank you so much for setting up the show. If you guys enjoyed my opinions, if you like what I'm about and everything like that, definitely check out my YouTube channel. It is called Zemi Games. I do a bunch of Xbox tutorials, gaming news, game reviews, all sorts of gaming content. So if you like that type of stuff, definitely check out my channel. And if you ever want to talk to me about any gaming stuff or anything like that, definitely follow me on Twitter at Ambassador or at Zemi Games. I almost did my old one at Zemi Games, and throw me a DM. My DMs are always open, so just feel free to DM me if you ever want to have a chat about gaming stuff. And everyone that I guess lives in America, because I don't think Canada has a Thanksgiving, but
they already had theirs,
months
I believe,
before or months later or something.
Yeah.
In England, I learned this podcast does not celebrate Thanksgiving. So if you guys live in America, happy Thanksgiving. And stay safe and don't drink and drive.
Yes, well, that's actually a great point. Great point. And of course, the elusive gamer, also known as Jamie Moran from the UK. Dude, thanks so much for being here. Obviously, I had asked you to be on Breakfast with Boom because you couldn't get off. You couldn't change your work schedule. So when I threw this out there, you immediately jumped on. And I'm glad to have you, obviously, because the more people we have on the panel, the more opinions that come out, and the more fun the show usually is. And today was a blast to do. Jamie, you are on the verge of 1,000 subs, and we have to push this dude past the 1,000 subs. I mean, it is again, as a content creator, if you are a supporter of my channel, I highly recommend Jamie Moran's channel. It's thought-provoking. It's no clickbait nonsense. It's a gamer talking about games. And if you are a gamer and you love hearing about games, you owe it to yourself to head over to his channel and give him a sub. His show, all of his information is in the show notes. It's just one click away. Let's help this dude get past 1,000 subs, because you don't understand how important it is as a content creator to get past that 1,000 subs. It is a big deal. It is monumental. And let's do that. So, Jamie, tell everyone where they can check out your outstanding YouTube channel, but more importantly, talk with you and reach out to you on Twitter.
Yeah, thanks, Boom. And today's been an awesome show, despite the slight audio hiccup and interesting topics. And yeah, on YouTube, it's the Elusive Game. I talk about Xbox game and stuff, but I don't like to clickbait people. Like I know if you have a huge headline, you can get more clicks, but I like to be honest and straight to the point. And that's pretty much what I'm all about. And I'll have more videos out during the week and tomorrow and stuff. So the subscriptions would be nice, people. But yeah, my Twitter, I talk about gaming a lot, and sarcastic jokes, which is Jamie Moran UK, and I tweet a lot. And if you like tweets, yeah, click follow.
Yeah, absolutely. You do tweet a lot, and you do ask the opinion of the community, and you're also always putting stuff out there that's very interesting. So listen, we're gonna end the show. It's been a magnificent show, like I said, regardless of this small little 5 or 8 minute hiccup that we had. But I want to wish everyone, honestly, from both Mrs. Boomstick and myself, a very happy and plentiful Thanksgiving to you and your families. Obviously, we'll be back next week on Thursday at noon on a regular scheduled program time. And of course, Emmy will be returning to keep his seat warm, and the Welsh Gamer should be returning as well. Everyone, please don't drink and drive. I mean, honestly, the Zemi said it, and the Popo in me really has to say that people do it more than you think, and the last thing you want to do is kill somebody because you drank too much and you didn't call a cab. So don't do that. Treat others how you want to be treated, and it doesn't cost anything to be nice. Enjoy your holiday weekend. Be safe, and we'll see you next week on the newest episode of the Xbox Factor podcast. Take care, everyone.